Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. You are going to love our guest today. Her name is Amy Kemp. So she's got a coaching business. She coaches largely women, leaders. She's got a habit assessment on her website. She's just a really awesome lady, and she's going to explain. She's written a book. She's an author as well, and she really kind of helps people think about things differently so they can optimize their life. And you're going to love this conversation that we're going to have with her. So, without further ado, let's bring Amy on to the podcast right now. All right, so Amy, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to our conversation. I felt bad. I was, for the listeners, Amy was supposed to be on a couple weeks ago, and I was traveling. I had everything all set up. And then the hotel I was at, I had booked a room and their internet stopped working. And so Amy was good enough to reschedule for us, and we're able to do it now. And we're both in different parts of that huge storm that's coming through, freezing our tails off. So
I know. At least we're accustomed to it where we live, right? It's not like a shocker.
that's right. That's right. And first world problems. If I'm
Mhm.
inside, I'm safe, it's warm, like it could be a lot worse
Totally.
than where I'm at right now. So on our podcast, all we do is talk to folks about where they're at and in their life, how they got from where they were to where they're at, what they've learned along the way. And then for folks like you, who kind of make a living helping people think differently to make their lives better, we talk
Mhm.
about how they do that. So for the audience, you heard me in the intro. Amy has written a book. She's a coach. She does some very specific behavioral assessments to help people identify some things in their life. And she's going to walk us through all of that as we have our conversation. But what we usually do right at the beginning is say, tell us about yourself and how you made your way from where you started. And that's up to you. If you want to start, from when you learned to walk all the way to now, that's your that's your
Mhm.
prerogative.
Yeah.
But what we're looking for is kind of broad overview, and then we talk about inflection points. When were things hard, or when did you learn lessons, and how did you learn them, and what did you learn from them? And then we kind of move into all of the things that you're working with people on now. So the
Yeah.
floor is yours. Tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, I'd love that. So I grew up in a really tiny little town. I was loved and cherished as a child, I would say. I mean, I had a kind of idyllic childhood. I grew up on a lake and we swam, and, it was great. I was an athlete and played basketball, volleyball, but basketball was like the big sport in our area. And
Mm.
so ended up playing in college. And then after college, I got an education degree. I thought that I would become a college professor. That was my goal eventually, but had a turning point moment in a Marxist literary theory class where I decided that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to study for the rest of my life. It was just a little bit too far removed from people. And I really feel a strong sense of wanting to be interacting with people in the work I do. And so I did end up teaching high school English for 5 years. I coached and then ended up in sales, and I grew a business. I was eventually leading over 1,000 people across the United States. We were the number one team in sales in the company. I was sort of like at the top of the mountain professionally and had a lot of, clout in that very tiny world, I would say, or influence. I
Mm.
had a microphone in my hand a lot, I'll say, in that space, and loved the work I was doing and the investment in developing leaders, but really found myself in a transition. And when you're a leader and you go through a transition, it's a little tricky. um, I, things that I used to love doing in that stretch, I could not get myself to do them. Even though I knew logically how to do them, I was great at them. I would go to events that normally I would love and look forward to, and I almost felt like I was watching it from outside of my body. Everything sort of was losing its luster. and I didn't want it to.
Mm.
It was the craziest experience because I really was resistant to it. I thought, oh, this is not good. I also knew that if I made a shift, it was going to impact a lot of people. And that was really difficult because I really cared about those people. And so kind of a long story short, I was speaking at an event in Salt Lake City. I had worked with a business coach for years, like years prior, but we had stayed in touch. We were still good friends. So he lived in Salt Lake City. I said, Joe, I'm going to be in town. His name is Joe too. And I
He's a
said,
great. Sounds like a great guy.
yeah. And he said, I'll pick you up. Let's have dinner. So we met for dinner. And I told him that in the last few months, continuously, I had been having leaders approach me and talk to me about things that they weren't telling anyone else. They were just really struggling or isolated and there just weren't people that they could talk to. It was inappropriate for them to bring these things to other spaces. And I said, I feel like if I could gather these leaders into small groups, like something really cool could happen. There could be just some sort of, like I could facilitate a conversation and they would know they weren't alone. And there could be a safe space where they could talk about the challenges of running a business or an organization or a nonprofit or a government entity or whatever it was they were doing. And he said, well, we're starting a training on Monday to use the tool that I use. It's called the Habit Finder. You could always use that to guide the conversation. You could get certified. So when I tell you, Joe, that I had never once ever thought about being a business coach or doing this kind of work at all, ever until that moment, but everything in me was like, yep, and so I went home, talked over it was a significant financial and time investment with my husband. And he said, every time we've ever invested in you, it's been worth it, for which I'm forever grateful. And went through that training and then really started a business that now is 9 years old that I didn't really know was going to be a business. You know how you do that, but it
Yes.
grew so fast. And it was so aligned with the work I loved doing most, which is the development of people, my favorite thing in the whole world. So,
Wow. So
mhm.
that's very cool.
Yeah,
Going back a little bit,
yeah.
so you talked about team athletics. I'm such a proponent
Mhm.
of team athletics. I went through college on a baseball scholarship and I had a chance to play professionally. And I talk a lot on this podcast about how the lessons I learned in that world translate directly into the real world and real life. And I'd love to just hear your perspective on it. Sounds like you were pretty dedicated to that early in life. And how many
Mhm.
of those lessons do you still apply in your everyday life today? What's that
Yeah.
translation like in your experience?
Yeah. Well, I also have to mention that my husband worked for years as an athletic director. He has always coached since we've been together. So
Mm,
whether it was coaching our kids, but he's also been a varsity coach. He works in high school. So sports are a huge part of our life even today. My daughter just finished a 4-year volleyball career at Northwest Missouri State. And then my son is currently a sophomore playing college basketball also. And we have one more in high school. So I spend a lot of time in gyms
yeah.
still to this day. Um, it's interesting. I had coaches. I was so fortunate. It was cool. When my book came out, I hadn't seen my high school coach, who was one of the most formative people in my life for probably 20 years. Unbeknownst to me, my mom invited her to a book launch event that I did. I was being interviewed. And this is a great story, actually. This is such a great story. So, one of the things she taught us when we were playing is her name was Coach Kember, Kember. And she called it Kember time, where if you weren't 10 minutes early, you were late.
Mm,
So for practice, it was like you were there 10 minutes early, or else you heard about it and it was a problem. Well, she was late getting to this event, which I mean, I didn't even know she was coming, right?
yeah.
So I'm on stage, there's a room full of people, I'm being interviewed, and I see her walk in. I haven't seen her in 20 years. And the first thing I said legitimately, I said, Coach Kember. And then I looked at my hand as if I had a watch on. I have no idea how this happened. And I said, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And it was the best. Like, it was so great just to be able to like call her on it after all those years. But she was intense and she was hard. Like, she had high expectations. We also had a really, really successful team. And so she worked a lot with me on even framing myself as a leader. I don't know that I knew I was a leader. I don't know that anyone knows that really. You lead, but I'm not sure that I had words for it.
Mm.
I remember one time I was in her office and I was sitting in this bean bag she had in the corner. And she said to me, I was a freshman, and she said, if you really applied yourself, you could be the valedictorian of your class. And I remember thinking, like, wow, I didn't even consider that, right? But I remember, and I really attribute my becoming the valedictorian of our class to that one sentence she said to me. Because
Wow.
I, I didn't think about it. I wouldn't have pursued it. I didn't know, right? And she saw something in me really from a young age. So I learned that a lot of times if you can see something in someone and speak it to them, they will become it. If you have a vision for what they could be and you can tell them that, it is one of life's greatest gifts.
Oh my gosh, I love that statement. And just me personally, I for whatever reason,
Hmm.
I've always been in leadership positions. Even as a kid, I was the captain of every team I was on, and blah 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 blah. But one of the things I learned was what you just said. And so I would challenge people and say, I know you've got more in you. I'm counting on you." And when you kind of put it to him that way, I need you. I am counting on you.
Yeah.
Um, People tend to take it much more seriously than if they're trying to be introspective and say, what am I capable of? They tend to
Yeah.
underestimate their abilities because they don't believe in themselves to the extent that they should. And as
Oh,
leaders, that's a part of our job is to draw that out of people, right?
yes, or even just to see the potential,
Yep.
right? Like she saw this person has the capacity to do this, but I didn't have a framework for that because I was 14. I mean, I didn't know, and so I just didn't know. But once she said it, I started to think, well, maybe I could. Well, maybe I wonder what that even takes. And I started
Yeah.
to really like think differently about it. I just had this happen at an event, and I have gotten more feedback on this than anything from this. It was an event that I was leading and I interviewed at it one of my clients. She currently is a VP at a university in a role like student development. She oversees admissions and a bunch of different things. And I said to her in front of everyone, and it wasn't planned. I just in the moment felt it kind of come to me. And I said, I don't have any doubt that someday you'll be the president of a university. You're that kind of leader. You are absolutely preparing for that next step. It has been shocking how many people have like that was the thing they remember from that event was just that moment of me publicly seeing and saying the thing that I saw in her. And how meaningful that was, but also just as a reminder to anyone who is leading a team right now, like, are you doing that for your people? Are you calling them to something higher that you see in them beyond where they're performing right now? And
Mm.
if not, like, why not? Because it's free.
Right.
It is.
In
It's
budget.
free. And it's so meaningful. It's so meaningful. People will never forget it and they will do anything for you, if they
Yeah.
know you believe in them like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so as you talk through kind of your backstory and how
Yeah.
you got to where you're at now, a lot of change in there. A lot of, hey, I was going down this path and then I wound up going down a completely different path. That's something that we talk about a lot on our podcast is that successful people take action. They don't
Mm,
necessarily know where that action is going to lead them, but a lot of times it'll lead them to a completely different place than they were, but they'd never get there if they never started down the road. And so, can you talk a little bit about your mindset around change and when you're confronted with, I have been focused and dedicated in this direction, and I'm not so sure that's the right direction anymore. How do
mm,
you, in your own life, manage that thought process and manage the emotions that go with that? And then how do you coach people who are in similar
mm,
situations? And I know you tend to focus largely on female leaders, and that's great,
mm.
but how do you
Sure.
coach them to manage that as well? Because I think those types of things are
Mm.
gender neutral, right? I mean, everybody
Oh,
goes through similar things, right?
definitely. Yeah. Um, it's interesting because in my path, there are the work I was doing was actually very similar. The vehicle changed.
Hmm.
So it's like I drove this car to a certain rest stop, and then there was another car ready for me. And so I got out and got into that one. And then I drove that car that was a little faster and a little nicer. And then so when I look back, I do see common themes of the same thing I loved about teaching high school English, when you could see a light bulb come on, when a student did something and then they gained confidence and they grew into something that they weren't before, leading to when I was leading a sales team where I was developing those people and saying, I really can see that you could do this, and let's look at what that would take, and making walking with them through that change, and then now doing it just sort of in a stripped down with like a higher level leader. So there was a progression of like
Hmm.
the levels at which I was doing the same kind of work. The vehicle changed when I outgrew the vehicle I was in. One thing I would say to someone though who's facing that kind of a transitional season, or where there's change that feels imminent, is when you're in a transition, don't rush. Because transitions have something to teach us that we need for the next leg of the journey. If you rush through it because it feels awkward and uncomfortable, you won't be prepared for what's ahead. But the staying in it, the discomfort of that transitional season, can feel excruciating, and it can feel really lonely too. Because a lot of the times when you're in that transition, the people you would normally talk to kind of have a stake in the game of you staying the same.
Right.
Even like my husband, who's great, he was like, I don't think we need to be making a change here from the thing that pays our bills, right? Like he had a stake in my staying the same that was pretty strong.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Even though he was supportive, there was also like, yeah, but we're not like gonna stop earning the money from this. I mean, it was a very like, ugh, and understandably so, right? So I just think there's something about leaders and transitions that are really important because there is a preparation in them. There's like a forging of your character. The things that came up that don't need to be there anymore come flying to the surface, and you get to like come face to face with them. So for example, when I was leaving the role and moving into this new business, I got a lot of feedback from people that sounded like, are you crazy? Like you're number one. I mean, or that just sounded like, isn't it enough? Isn't that selfish? Like you really have to go do something else? Or that sounded like, even there was some that was like, you're giving up on your calling. And so that caused me to have to really get quiet and talk to very few people about the transition and really trust my own inner knowing at a higher level than I ever had before. Turns out I needed that trust in my inner knowing to be able to steer the ship of a company that was very different, where like I built it. That was a very different level of self trust I needed for this new vehicle compared to when I was working in the construct that was already existing, right? So that preparation of me getting that negative feedback and having to say, yes, you're saying that, and I'm going to do this. Like I needed that to be able to build the new thing. So again, it had some preparation in there for me that was vital.
Yeah, and look, on the criticism front, like it doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna get criticized by somebody. Somebody's gonna like that's how it works. Um, I always tell people it's interesting to me because so again, I've been in leadership positions like my entire life, and for whatever reason, people will just take shots at you. But what I've noticed is that the people that will take shots at you or criticize you, like I literally can't think of anyone who's done that to me or criticized me that's done more than I have or is like
Mm.
working as hard as I have. It's almost always someone who has less of a stake in it than me or hasn't traveled as far down the road as me. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way.
Oh, yeah.
It's simply an observation that the people that are like the good news is I try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me and more successful than me. The good news is I have tons of options because like there are so many
Yeah.
smart and accomplished people out there.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of being the low man on the totem pole. I'm not afraid of being challenged. I want to be challenged to get better because that's where all your growth happens is when you're fighting and struggling. And I've learned that over the years, largely through athletics, right? So when
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
learning to do whatever it is, throw your
Yeah.
fastball the right way or whatever, like you struggle and then you
Yeah.
struggle, succeed, struggle, succeed, and you slowly get better at it. But I learned long ago to kind of quiet the noise on those because those aren't people that are worth listening to as it relates to
Mhm.
that particular subject.
Yeah. Yeah. Feedback is put in a container that's separate from me. And I look at it. It's not like you ignore the
That's right.
feedback, but
That's
you get
exactly
to
right.
decide which feedback impacts your choices.
Yep.
So you will receive a lot, but it's sort of like you get a lot of mail, but then you kind of go through your mail every day. Maybe it's just me, but do you like sort your mail? Where it's like
I
garbage,
absolutely.
you know,
Yep.
garbage needs to do something, like whatever. And like, so that's kind of the same process I follow with feedback from people is like, okay, it comes in and that's fine. It's going to come in no matter what you do. Like you said, if you do something, anything, you're going to receive some. And then you get to decide which mail you open and keep or take action on, and which mail you just like, that was junk mail, and I'm going to just toss it. Thank you, though, for mailing it to me, whatever.
Totally.
Fine.
And
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing up the fact that you can't just ignore it because more
Yeah.
than one thing can be true at the same time. Someone can be
Mhm.
uh, intentionally attacking you. They can have bad intentions. They can be really kind of jerk, and they can also be right. That doesn't mean they're not right. You know?
100%. Also, they can be scared because you provided something for them that is leaving or that it will no longer be there. And people do strange things when they're scared.
Yeah.
They're not always at their best when they're scared. And that is part of it too, is kind of sifting through like what they're saying and whether it's coming from a place of fear and wanting things to stay the same or really genuine interest. Have you gone through like a professional transition that affected a lot of people?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Was that time when you look back on it, like, can you see it as a refining time? Like a
Oh,
time where you learned a lot, you really had to like,
for sure. And so like
Mhm.
again, I kind of learned long ago to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's funny because in my own life in like the last couple of years, I've gotten a little too comfortable. And I was
Oh,
talking to my wife about it the other day and I said, "Hey, I don't know how I let this happen, but I got a little fat and happy here. Like this isn't going to cut it.
mm,
We got to get back to challenging ourselves." And I say
yeah.
we in our relationship, I'm typically the one that spurs those
Mm,
conversations, but like, my wife and I have been together for 30 plus years, and she is every bit as tenacious and intelligent and committed as I am in the things that she's responsible for in our relationship. So Like there is no I'm here, she's here. No, not true at all. But I'm the one that sets that pace for us, right? Everyone, you know how relationships work. There's just depending on the scenario, one person's in charge. If it's anything around relationships and emotions, I step to the back and let the professional, my wife, handle the situation, and I shut up. And if it's leadership type stuff, I tend to take the lead on those kind of things. But I've
Yeah.
gotten I've gotten a little soft in my in the last couple of years, and I got to get that edge back.
Wow.
And so I bring that up because throughout my entire career, they being whoever I was working for would literally pull me from one group and say, "Go fix that group," and then you would get that group
Oh.
fixed, and then they would pull you out. And I would always tell
Mm.
them, this is always what I told them. I said the best compliment you could give me as a leader is if they remove me and absolutely nothing in this group changes. If it runs just like it did when I was here and
Yeah.
nobody misses me, I've done a great job as a leader. You should forget about me a week after I've been here. Literally, that's
Yeah.
the best compliment you can give me as a leader. And
Yeah.
because when you do that and you empower people to own their own future and own their own decisions, they generally do,
Mhm.
and they feel so much better about themselves. They rise to the challenge, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so that transition you talked about, I went through it multiple times in my professional career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's even funny. I sometimes I want that challenge, bit. And I've learned that sometimes I don't need to have it in my business always. Sometimes it is professional or with my career, but also just you can do the same thing. So this is a silly example, but I play a lot of pickleball. I really love pickleball. And there was a league and I'm good enough to play in it, but it's like I'm probably like mid to lower of the 40 people. Also, I'm one of three women,
Mm.
right? So it's me and 37 guys and two other women. And it's like an hour away, and I'm the only one I know out of the 40 people, right? I don't know anyone.
Yep.
I was so nervous going the first night. I mean, I was so nervous. And I thought to myself, good. Like, you need to be nervous sometimes about things you're doing because most rooms I walk into now, I'm not really nervous. I don't
Right.
really, like, I'm not, but I was so nervous. And it turns out when I got there, they're just people.
Right.
Right. I mean, it turns out that, of course, like my friend who I play with a lot, she was like, well, of course you made new friends. And, of course I did. But I'm just saying, like, I thought to myself, oh, I've got to make sure because I think you start to atrophy and age when you stop putting yourself in spaces where you feel a little nervous,
Yep.
a little like out above your skis. And it doesn't have to always be professional. It can just be you're trying something new, you're showing up in a different room, or whatever. It's a good practice to be in.
I love that. I just recently I auditioned for the lead singer in a band, and I
Ooh.
haven't sang since high school. And uh they decided to go with a female vocalist instead of a male, but the guy that runs the group said, "Hey, I really like you. For this group, we need a female vocalist, but I'd really like to put a group together with you and me." And so we're actually putting that group together now so that we can start playing in bars and at festivals and those kind of things. And that's completely outside of anything I've done in the last 30 years, completely foreign. I'm not a great singer as I sit here right now. I'm working on all the, just like athletics, if you do the work, if you follow the process, the result takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing all the vocal exercises, taking all the coaching, blah, 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 blah. But
Yeah.
it's good because I'm not good at it right now. Like it's good to struggle. It's good to have to fight, you know?
Yes. Okay, let me put that in even different words. This one of my clients, I had her teach this at the workshop that I just did. She was in healthcare administration for years and years and years and years. She led a huge team, and what they called it was like novice to expert. So when
Mm,
they were training new nurses, you would come in and you're a novice, and these are the things. The thing about being a novice is you need a checklist. Like you need very basic step by step by step. And then you kind of move to like competent. And then you kind of move to, and you keep moving up until you're an expert, right? The thing about being an expert is experts are terrible at teaching novices because
Mhm.
by the time you're an expert, you're dealing with so much nuance and you're kind of like overseeing the big picture and you have so much like experience and institutional knowledge and understanding of what's happening. So the example and what we talked about a lot after that is always in your life, especially you don't ever want to be the expert in everything you're doing.
Totally.
Right? You want to remember what it feels like to be the novice and to have that feeling of like figure it's what you're doing right now, like the step by step, the basics of learning the skill and practicing the skill and the repetition and the ooh, and then this and then that, because that pathway from novice to expert is so humbling and it keeps you humble as a leader too, right? So it keeps you aware that the people you're leading who are just at that novice level, they still need a checklist and they still, they're here. So I do think for leaders, it's important to always have that experience going in your life where you're in that space where you're the novice and you're learning again.
I think it's so good for you, and I haven't had it in my life for a while, so I intentionally picked something that I knew I love. Like I love music, I love like singing in the car or whatever. And I used to be a pretty good singer back in the day. I had parts in plays and those types
Yeah,
of things, but I haven't done it in literally decades. But it's all still in there somewhere. I just got to get back to practicing it
love
and
it.
and go through the process and fall in love with the process. And so
Mhm.
that's what I'm doing.
Good.
Speaking of process,
Mhm.
so you have this kind of, I don't know if epiphany is the right word, but hey, from the outside, if anyone was looking at my professional life, hey, wildly successful. She's got everything nailed down. Why would you ever make a change? But you knew something was off.
Mhm.
And so you talk to your old friend slash coach slash confidant, and you're in Salt Lake, and you go through this training around what is it called? It's habit. What's it called?
Habit Finder is the name of the assessment tool.
Habit
The
Finder.
Habit
Tell us
Finder.
tell us about that because that
Yeah.
leads you directly into what you've been doing the last 9 years, right? Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
Habit
Yeah.
Finder assessment.
I mean, essentially, I got to be a novice again, right? I
Mm,
went back and I didn't, this was something new. Now, I had experienced the Habit Finder as a client. I've done, I've invested more money and time in coaching and professional development than anyone I know except for maybe two people, right? I've
mm.
really been intentional throughout my entire professional journey about that. Also, I play better when I'm being coached. I love being coached. Like it is so fun for me to be coached. And so I just know this about myself and I've understood that that investment at every step of the way is when I'm performing at my best, which makes total sense if you think about it. Players play better when the coach is at practice, you know, of course. Okay, all that to say. So this tool, it measures your subconscious habits of thinking. So, as human beings, we are hardwired to survive. Our brains create pathways for thoughts that we repeat often to conserve energy. These pathways get deep because we run through them, and it's very beneficial. I mean, we don't want to have to think about blinking, for example, right? You don't, you want that to be a habit that happens without your thinking. So 80% of our thoughts happen at the subconscious level. We're only really operating in that top maybe 20 to 25% that we're conscious and aware of. Some of these habits of thinking that help us survive in a season of life, when you move into a new season, particularly survival mechanisms, like when you are in a situation where you no longer need a survival habit and you continue to employ it, it will become detrimental and damaging. So let me give you an example that will kind of bring it to life.
Yes.
I see this happen a lot with business owners who are the founder of their business. It takes a lot to get a business off the ground. a lot. And there's a narrative in that opening stretch of that where it's like, whatever it takes. I will take on any client. I will climb any mountain. I will cross any stream. I will work until, I will sacrifice my entire life and just build this business. But it's a little bit like getting a plane off the ground. It takes a lot of fuel. If you continue to burn the level of fuel that you burned getting it off the ground past the point of reaching cruising altitude, you will crash and burn.
Yeah,
You will.
no
It's a
doubt.
guarantee. Because this is a survival mechanism. Do whatever it takes, right? That survival mechanism, once you no longer need it, becomes detrimental and limiting and damaging. And so that's a habit of thinking that's happening at the subconscious level. I need to be everything, do everything, whatever it takes. I say yes to everything. And what I'm helping people do is those habits of thinking that are now creating resistance, let's name them and then let's create new pathways that are going to be more beneficial for you. Or like, this is not going to be sustainable. We've got to make some
Totally.
changes. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so
Mhm.
there's like a rubric that you put people through in order to
Mhm.
kind of assess these habits.
Yeah. So the assessment actually kind of cool. It's free. You can take it on my website. And it's like a snapshot in 6 different areas. So connection with people, as an example. These are the habits of thinking at the subconscious level that show up when you are trying to connect with another human being. There's one that is, it's called physical creation, but it's really like work. So when you are seeing a process through from start to finish, these are the habits of thinking that show up when you're doing that process. One of them is structure. This one's always interesting for entrepreneurs or people who think like entrepreneurs because you don't have to own your own business to think like an entrepreneur, also. A lot of
Right.
people have entrepreneurial habits of thinking. Um, One of them, this habit, it can be at high risk toward resistance. So here's how it works. To be an entrepreneur, you want efficiency. You want the the fastest path from here to there. You want if there's a problem, solve it quickly, right? There's like I don't want to follow that rule if it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to have a lot of process and bureaucracy that doesn't make sense, that slows down the process. That's a very entrepreneurial habit of thinking.
Mm.
So I'm resistant to structures that feel like they're impeding my progress. Okay, which is very beneficial in building a business. The problem is you become your own boss. Then you say, I'm going to follow this structure. I'm going to create a to-do list today and I'm going to see it through from start to finish. And then that habit of thinking is so deep that you're like, I don't have to. I don't have to follow that rule. So it's like you become your worst employee. You're the
Yes.
boss and you're your worst employee. You're not doing what you know you need to do. You're not having that conversation that you know needs to be had. You're not filling out that report that feels really tedious and annoying. You're not gathering the numbers that your accountant needs to, whatever the thing is. You just get resistant because you've built that habit for so long of being resistant to structure. So it's very common to like then create resistance.
So I relate to that one directly because I am by nature a contrarian. It's and that can be helpful in certain situations, and it can be extremely detrimental in certain situations. I can tell you that it's kept me out of a lot of fights, and I've been in a lot of fights, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm 54, and we used to settle things a lot differently than we do now, and that's just was the world I lived in and grew up in. But I would always ask, or what? Someone would threaten me, and I would say, or what? I want to know what my options are because I think I know what you're
Oh,
proposing, and I don't think you can do it. And so,
mm,
like, sometimes I got my ass kicked because I said that. Turns out they
yeah.
could do what they said they were going to do. But it's the same thing in business. Like, I took over a department, and this was back in what was it? Late 90s, early 2000s. And so at this place, we still printed reports on dot matrix printers with green bar paper. You remember green bar paper?
I do. Hmm.
Yeah. And so we printed so many of them. We literally had a van that it was full. It was a passenger van, but all the seats had been taken out. We used to take boxes of these reports that were printed, bring them over to this place where my group worked, and we would sort them all out. And so I didn't start in charge of this group, but I wound up in charge about a year after I got there. And so I said I'd done the job and I'd been pretty successful, so I got promoted. And people said, "What do you do to be successful?" And I said, "I look at these three reports. It's literally the only things I look at." They're like, "You don't do this report? You don't do that report?" I said, "I throw them directly into the recycling. Like I've literally never looked at those reports ever." And I said, "I don't think anyone else is looking at them either. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to quit printing them." And they're like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "I think I can. Watch me." And so I stopped printing these reports. I printed the three that were important because I'd used them. I knew they were. And so I just quit printing the other ones. Nobody said a word for about a month. And then I got a call from like, it was, the galactic commander of something.
Yeah.
And, "Hey, I haven't seen this report in a while." I said, "Oh, yeah. For how long?" They said, "I don't know." I said, "I bet you it's been about a month." And they said, "Did you like quit producing these reports?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "You can't do that." I said, "Oh, yeah, I can. I did it about a month ago." And they said, "Well, I look at those reports." I said, "It doesn't sound to me like you look at them because you took a month to call me on this critical report. So like if you tell me what you get out of that report, I'll come up with a solution for that. But I'm not going to go back to this ridiculous process of printing out these green bar reports. We pay a goddamn driver, a
Yeah.
full-time driver to run reports back and forth. Just that position alone is inefficient. Forget all
Right.
the work that goes into them." And
Right.
so in that instance, it worked out really well. But,
Yeah.
you can upset some apple carts that really shouldn't be upset too when you're contrarian. You got to be
Yeah.
thoughtful about how you do it. It's not always, I try to warn people about that because they think if someone's got a characteristic that they wish they had, that
Hmm.
it's like Xanadu to have that characteristic.
Yeah.
Nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. There's usually pros and cons
No,
to everything,
there's
you
like
know?
a shadow side to every
Yeah.
strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm. It's like
Exactly.
right on the edge, you can cross over pretty quickly into this thing I'm really, really great at can also become my biggest weakness in a second
Totally.
if I cross
Totally
over
agree.
this invisible line, right? That just yeah, definitely. I'll give you a funny example of this resistant idea also where I teach about and talk a lot about a tool that I use with my clients called the 6 most important things list. And it has its origins like way back to there's like a long history of this tool and how it got started. That's a really cool story. The whole story is in my book, but it's basically that by the end of my workday, I want to have a list of the 6 most important things that I want to get done for the next day written out. And I then work through that list. And it's a very like, I don't always get through the list, but like just that process of having to question what are the most important things that get done. So I created this very cool branded, has my branding on it, sheet that I can use to do the 6 most important things list. Well, I'm so resistant to my own structures at times. It's funny. Like, I don't have to follow that rule, that I have it written right now on a goofy scratch piece of paper, right? Like sitting over here. When on my desk, I have the beautiful, like branded one. And again, like it's silly stuff like that, but that is not damaging because I'm still doing the thing. But what I'm saying is, I'm creating the system and then I'm resisting it. It's ridiculous that I wouldn't just do it. But I have that habit of thinking I'm at high risk for being resistant to structure in that way. And so I've learned to like give myself little outlets. Like I said, if the list is getting done, does it matter if it's on a yellow piece of paper or this one? No. So just go with it, right? And I'll do that for a couple weeks and then I'll do something else, like whatever. But I just I want you to know that it's really common to see in people who have entrepreneurial habits of thinking that resistance.
Yeah, It makes perfect sense. And you had talked about like how our brains work. That's something I've actually done quite a bit of research on. And look,
Mhm.
my real job, I sell groceries for a living. I'm the CEO of a company that owns grocery stores in Chicago. And yay, like we do good work. That's awesome. All I'm saying is it doesn't qualify me in any way to talk about psychology, but I do it anyways. Um, I, I'm a good negotiator and I'm really good at relating to people. That's my biggest skill is I can be on a receiving dock or in a boardroom and I am just as well received in either place
Mhm.
by the people
Yep.
who tend to be in those places because I'm a real and genuine person. I relate to people. But I want to understand what how people think and what drives their thought processes
Mhm.
because I don't think I can provide as good of leadership or good as direction as possible if I don't understand what's driving their thought process.
Yeah.
And so I've done a lot of research on it. And the way I try to describe it to people is essentially our brains are running outdated software. So
Mm.
our brains are kind of running like iOS 3 on a Apple on an iPhone 17.
Yep.
And
Which, by the way, the new update has slowed down everything that I own. I'm super annoyed. And it's making my phone hot, like my iPad, my phone. I'm annoyed. So,
hey,
yes, I
yeah,
totally am jiving with your analogy. Yes.
Tim Cook, if you're in the audience, can you do something about
Come
that? Let's go,
on.
buddy.
What are we doing?
Come
I
on,
know you want me
pal.
to buy all new devices, but come on.
Exactly. So 100,000 years ago, when we were living in a very hostile environment and you could go outside of the dwelling that you were in and get attacked or eaten by something, there were roving hordes of unfriendly people or unfriendly tribes that could kill you. Weather could kill you. Your brain was wired to immediately detect anything that looked weird or odd or different and flag it as a threat. And your brain still does that. The problem is we live in a much more civilized and a much more safe society, but your brain doesn't really have levels as it relates to threats. It just sees threat or not a threat. Is that different? Then it's a threat. If that the same, then it's not a threat. And by the way, the thing that's the same might be really bad for you. That cigarette that
Yeah.
I smoke all the time, well, I know what that is. That's cool. No, it's not cool, but I know what it is.
I
And I'm
know.
still alive, so it couldn't be that bad. So, yeah, smoke another cigarette. No big deal.
Yep.
And so, until you can understand how that works,
Yep.
I don't think, I shouldn't say I don't think, I think it's a lot more difficult to make
Mhm.
the changes that you want to make in your life, whether it's starting new habits that you want to incorporate or stopping habits that you don't want in your life
Yeah.
anymore. And like you
You
talked
will
about, it's
feel
those neural pathways.
Yeah, your brain is essentially because it's hardwired to survive, which I love your description of like going back kind of historically because it is how we survived. So essentially what's happening when you're working against these pathways is that your subconscious brain is screaming danger. And that feels like discomfort, um, fear, frustration, resistance, right? It doesn't register as like danger, but that's how we're experiencing it. This happens a lot also if you out earn like what your family of origin earned. Um,
Totally. Yes. Oh
so
my gosh.
I had a client. It's really interesting because her whole goal in hiring me was to earn more money. Turns out the journey to getting there was different than how both of us expected that it would be, but has found herself now where like she really doesn't need to worry about money. It is so uncomfortable to her. It is so like she has to sit with it a lot. Like it is everything in her is saying this isn't okay. This doesn't feel right. It was more comfortable for her to struggle than it is for her to live in abundance financially. And part of that is like we're hardwired also to fit into a tribe. Well, if your family of origin was always talking negatively about people with money or had a lot of negative messaging around scarcity and money,
Yeah.
the second you show up in the world with a lot of money, you're now the target of the very people who helped you survive.
Yeah, that's right.
and even if they're not alive still, you can hear their voice in your head, right? You can hear them saying, like, well, who do they think they are? And it must be nice for them. And there's just a lot of messaging around money. In addition, because I work a lot with women, for women historically, it's been very dangerous to stand out,
Oh yeah.
to differentiate. Our role was to blend in, to make things okay, to attach ourselves to someone else. Like that's how we survive. So we're bucking a bunch of like, that kind of programming at the same time when we're saying, I'm going to do work that's exceptionally valuable in today's marketplace, and it's going to pay me a lot of money in exchange. That is it's such a like healthy use of power and how that works. But for women, that feels dangerous.
Sure. Yeah.
That feels like, ooh, this is not a good idea.
Yeah, look, clearly, I know that there's lots of controversial stuff in society today. I'm not trying to bring any of that up, but I'm a man. I think it's pretty obvious I'm a man. I've never had the experiences you just talked about, but that makes tons of sense to me
Yeah.
when you talk about it. And so, like for the audience, I think it's a good example. You don't have to experience something to be empathetic to it and listen to someone else's experiences. What Amy just said makes tons of sense to me. That checks out. And by the way, I've got a wife who I think is the best person I've ever met in my life, who I care about more than anybody. I've got a mother. I've got three sisters. I've got a sister-in-law.
Yeah.
I call her my daughter. She's my daughter-in-law, but I call her my
Mm,
daughter because, like,
yeah.
I hate the in-law moniker. Like, you're either family or you're not. Like, I
Yeah.
hate it. So I
Mm.
call her my daughter, which is a little odd when you have to explain this is my son and daughter and they're married, but like, whatever is what.
I'm watching Game of Thrones right now, so that's fitting into my whole narrative. Everyone's married to someone they're related to or something. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Point being,
Yeah.
I completely am supportive of
Mm.
women. And I
Yeah.
get that there's differences between men and women in terms of how they're perceived and how they think. And I'm speaking in very broad generalities. I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just noting what I have in my 54 years of experience seems very obvious to me. And we can't
Mm.
figure out how to coexist the best way possible with each other if we completely ignore those things that seem very obvious to most of us. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that
Yeah.
perspective because I'm
Well,
not
and
capable of
also
doing it.
it's really helpful, I think, for men to recognize that most women don't realize that they're operating in these subconscious habits that are holding them back or keeping them small. And sometimes I'll have male clients say, like, why aren't they going for that job? She's the most qualified person we have, And I'll say, like, well, that's dangerous to her subconscious mind. Like to go to say, I'm going to do something that's going to thrust me into the spotlight, that's going to put me at a level that's apart from all my peers, that's going to, like,
Right.
you're triggering all these things. Now, is she capable? Oh my gosh, 100%. But it may take you inviting or saying, like, hey, you should go for that. You would be great at that role. So many times my clients will say, like, it was the leader who said, hey, you should apply for that. And they'll say, I don't know if I'm capable. And they would say, yeah, you are, go. That's so important because you're overriding that like ancestral wiring that we have that is
Yeah.
like keeping them stuck. So it's really cool. I actually think it's really empowering when you understand it because it helps me have a lot of compassion and empathy for people because for the most part, what people are doing, they're doing it because at some point it helped them survive.
That's right.
Now, there are consequences for some of those things, but I'm saying like there are also times where I'm like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Of course, you're doing that if you understand why you're wired that way. And that just feels good. It's like, oh, okay. I'm not
Yep.
crazy.
And that's exactly what I wanted to. That's why I try to learn how people, what drives them to think the way they think. Because if you understand where it's coming from, you got a much better chance of helping them think about it differently. And
Uh-huh.
if you're going to make any changes in your life, you have to learn to think differently about the things that are going on in your life. And like you had talked about change being perceived as a threat. Like, well, wait a minute. I always eat 3 cheeseburgers for dinner and I'm trying to lose weight. I'm only going to eat one cheeseburger. Wow, that's different. That's a threat. What if I
Yeah.
starve to death without those other two cheeseburgers? I always smoke a cigarette after dinner. I'm not smoking a cigarette. What's this about? I usually watch this Netflix series instead of going to the gym right now. That's different. All of
Yeah.
those little changes, those have an inertia to them that you have to overcome. And
Yep.
it's very difficult to do in many circumstances for many of us. And it all depends. Like, for whatever reason, I've never used an illegal drug in my life, and I've never been drunk in my life.
Mm,
Those things have never ever appealed to me. I love to
mm,
gamble, so like
mm,
if I'm in a casino, could I wind up in a bad spot if I let it get a hold of me? Probably. I'm sure I
mhm,
could.
mhm.
But if you put me in a bar, I'm not ever going to get drunk in a bar because I don't. That particular temptation doesn't do anything to me or for me. And you
Yep.
just have to know who you are and
Yeah.
what is easy for you to control and what is not easy for you to control. Spend your time
Mhm.
focused on this stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you one other, this is a really common habit of thinking that I'm seeing right now that's fascinating me. There's a habit of thinking where you have a high risk of being obsessive, which
Mm.
means your brain is always thinking, just thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And people who have this habit of thinking are at high risk of being very attached to their ideas. So I see this happen in businesses a lot. And I'll tell this as a story that I kind of tell in my book, but my husband is a principal at a high school. This isn't actually a real story, but I have his permission to use him as the example because it's like a really actually the situation kind of is, but there he was really irritated about the way the buses were dropping off kids and the cars because kids were walking through the line where those cars were dropping off. And he just
Cross
felt like it was
traffic,
getting
sure. Yeah.
so my example is this. He's on the leadership team at the school. He's been thinking about this problem, thinking. He comes up with a solution and he's been thinking about it for days and days and days. He walks into this leadership room where there's a table and let's imagine the way his habit of thinking is right now. It's like the idea is him.
Oh yeah.
So it's like he climbs his big old 6'5" rear end up on that table, and he sits down in the middle and he presents it. And then when people start to say, well, but then there could be a backup of traffic on North Street. Did you think about this? It feels like they're poking at him.
They're
It,
attacking them,
it
right?
feels like a personal attack.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the example of what happens when you're an obsessive thinker because you just get so attached to it. It's like it becomes you. Versus he walks into the same room, he has a backpack and he has the idea in it, like it's invisible, but pretend. And he pulls it out of the backpack and he puts it in the middle of the board table. And he says, I have this idea. And it's not me, but it's just this idea that I have, right? Then it's safe for everyone to like poke at it and prod it and you actually can make it into a better idea, right? You can if he doesn't get all defensive and fight back and then, get attached to it, you can just be like, "Oh yeah, I didn't think about North Street. What do you think about that? Well, maybe we could." And, you there becomes this collaboration. So I've been using this a lot with teams, just starting every meeting with that reminder because what's happening is everyone's coming in, and I think it's the technology. I think our brains are going so fast right now that like everyone's so attached to their ideas and it's destroying like collaboration and relationship. And so it's like, can we get our ideas away from us and onto the table where we can talk about them in a way that it's not personal, that it's very much like we're talking about that thing on the table?
I love that approach. It brings
Mhm.
just two things pop into my mind when I hear you talking about that. That's such a good example. That's so clear to me the way you laid it out. It makes me think of two things. One, Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett's kind of partner in Berkshire Hathaway, passed away about a year and a half ago. And I heard him talk. I love listening to Charlie Munger talk a lot more than I love listening to Warren Buffett talk. That's just me. I got nothing against Warren Buffett. He's been wildly successful, all that stuff. But Charlie
Mhm.
Munger started off in the military. He was also an attorney and a business person, but he used to plan flight routes in World War II. And he's talked about the first thing he did when he was planning a flight route was think, what could I do that will get these guys killed? And he wanted to identify the worst possible scenario so he could avoid them at all costs.
Mm.
And that made a ton of sense to me. So instead of thinking, how do I make this go right? First, think about all the things that could go wrong and plan
Mm.
for those. Steer clear of those. And that's so and the it's not how I think normally, but it
Mm.
was such a good approach. And I'm like, hey, it's Charlie Munger. He's probably worth listening to. He's done a thing or two that's worth doing.
Yeah.
So
You're
that
kind of like giving yourself permission to poke at your own idea in that example, right? Like you're saying the whole point is that I'm going to poke at it. That's what I'm going
yes.
to start with.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And that leads me to I talk a lot about the skill and technique of thinking critically. And to think critically, you have to be dispassionate about the subject. So,
Yes, not attached to it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so that's hard to do for most people on varying degrees. So it's funny to me that I do a podcast like the one that I do because I'm probably the least touchy-feely guy on the face of the earth. My wife always says I probably have two emotions if you count hunger as an emotion. And but I'm very genuine. I'm not judgmental, and I'm empathetic. I try to understand where someone's coming from, not because I'm a great guy, but because I want to be successful. I feel like that's the best way for me to be successful if I can understand how people are thinking. And so you disassociate yourself from the emotions of things and try to look at things from a factual basis. Now, just like we talked about earlier, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. And I think one of the, not, I shouldn't say I think, I know for a fact the best decision I ever made was marrying my wife because she is the highest emotionally intelligent person I've ever met in my life. And she's the perfect counterbalance to someone like me who can disassociate themselves from those emotions, which in a lot of instances is not a good thing to do.
Oh,
Emotion needs to be a part of it, and
yeah.
you need to incorporate that in there somewhere. And she's so good at, we always say our relationship's kind of like Beauty and the Beast, and clearly I'm not Beauty. And but
Mhm.
she can make me stop and think and say, hey, you're going off the rails here. You got to come back to the
Mhm.
center. You're a good
Mhm.
thinker, but you're not doing this one the right way.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then
It's
the
got
flip is
check and
when
balance.
yeah, when
Mhm.
she gets too far on the emotional part, I'm pretty good at saying, "Hey, let's take a couple deep breaths. Let's think about this
Mhm.
logically and then come to a conclusion after we do that."
Yeah. Yeah,
So we
definitely.
respect each other. We respect each other's
But
strengths, you
it's
know.
something good to think about if you're building a team, knowing which you are and knowing that that person that's sharing the decision making with you needs to counterbalance for you too, right? In
Exactly
a
the point.
marriage, but in a team or any kind of situation when you're picking someone to be aware. Yeah.
And respect them.
Mhm.
Respect that they bring
Yeah,
something
listen to
very
what they
valuable
say.
that you don't
Mhm.
have. Like it's
Yeah.
filling a gap for you. It's very valuable to have contrarian thinkers on the same team, so long as they respect each other.
Yeah, and you should be really worried if everyone's agreeing with
Woo!
everything,
Huge problem.
right? Because
Totally.
there is a hole in the idea somewhere, and nobody's poking at it. So, like, that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
exactly right. So that's a
Sometimes,
perfect. Sorry, go
sometimes
ahead.
obsessive thinkers also, they're so far ahead, they think so fast that their people just stop bringing ideas because they're like, well, they already will have figured it out.
Yeah, or they're not going to listen to me anyways.
Yeah.
They've made
They
up their
already think
mind.
that their way is the right way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they've
So,
made
and
up their
especially
mind.
if you have power, like you are the one deciding whether they have a job or not, then it's like even higher stakes. You've really got to work to get feedback because people will withhold it just out of their own safety. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yep.
But that's kind of a perfect segue into your coaching business and what you're doing now. So I know you do coaching, you do seminars, you do classes, you have a variety of ways that you work with people. Talk a little bit about so you did your habit assessment training
Yes.
and you built your business around that. Kind of talk about that process and what it's
Yeah.
evolved into and all of the things that you offer now. And then I want to talk about your book too.
Cool. So it's pretty simple, actually. And I have a goal this year. This is so funny. My goal this year is to not create any new offerings, just new clients.
Mm,
Because I can, the We were talking about that shadow side of your gift.
Mm.
I'm really creative and I'm also very good at executing ideas. And then I make things too complicated. So, my business manager is like on me. I said every week when we talk, the first thing I'm going to say is this year, I'm not creating any new offerings. I'm creating new clients. And I'm just focused on that because the offerings I have are so good and I don't need to complicate them. So, okay, I work with people really primarily in two ways. I have small groups that I lead that are just for women. For professional women, I lead like 8 to 10 at a time and they run in semesters. So we do them over lunch hour, and they go from like February through May, and then I have a fall semester. We work through the Habit Finder curriculum. So along with the assessment tool is a curriculum that walks you through the 6 habits of thinking and helps you to like learn to replace these subconscious habits with ones that are beneficial.
Mm.
So the groups are like my one, probably like my main offering in the year. It's where I see the most people, like I have the most interaction, right? And that's actually where it all started too, is that I started with this idea, like, what if I gathered these women? What would happen? And so it was really cool. Then I do work with people one-on-one. So those engagements, same curriculum, same tool. It's just like having a private tutor versus like being in a classroom or a small group setting. So it's just much more intimately. But also, a lot of my one on one clients, they have big roles and they can't really talk about stuff. It's just not appropriate.
Yeah.
They really do need to keep their decisions affect thousands of people. They can't just be talking about it in random groups, right? So those people who prefer that kind of one-on-one tailored setting, I do two like in-person events a year. One's a weekend retreat that I call Pause, and one is called Refresh. You'll get a kick out of this. My husband, this is one of the funniest things. My husband is so like you. He's so what you see is what you get. He could walk into any room. He's the same guy if you are the, CEO of the biggest company in the world or you're the one cleaning up the garbage cans in the room.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't care. Anyhow, so we do this event where we take 20 women and we take them to a city in the United States for a long weekend. And we don't do anything but like play. We just go do fun things. But what happens because they're so cool, the women who go, a lot happens. They are so learning from each other and connecting and laughing and just creating friendship among women who, when you are a high capacity woman who's a leader, a lot of times it's hard to have friends. And so this just provides that. But the funny part about my husband is that only like 2 years ago did he figure out that we're not really doing anything but fun. He was like, wait, there's no training? And I was like, nope. He's like, there's no nothing. And then he sat there for a minute and then he was like, do you think I could do like a men's refresh? Like, sure, you can do that. That's fine. So anyhow, so I do that. And then I have the book now that I'm promoting and working with as well. The book I launched in 2024 on leap year day. So it's almost 2 years old. I feel like I have a 2-year-old. But I wanted to create a place where anyone could enter into the work I do because not everyone can afford my other offerings or
Sure.
has access to them. But the book is something where it's like, I knew I had the right publisher when the publisher said to me, oh, this feels like a coaching session with you. And I was like, yes, that's what I
Perfect.
want. Yes.
Yes.
So it is definitely written for someone and not about something, but it is a very interactive, experiential book that's about the core message is that you can't outwork your thought habits. So
So it said differently, you have to change the way you think if you want to change your approach. Is that right?
it's like if you could just work harder and get more money, influence, and impact, you would have already done it.
Right.
Because most of my clients, their hard work is not their problem.
Yeah, they're
They
grinders,
don't,
right?
yeah, they're like, I've climbed this ladder. I know how to do, they're not like they haven't they've dug some ditches
Yeah.
and they've gotten somewhere and they want to go somewhere else, but then they're just trying to employ the survival mechanism of working harder and it's not working anymore. And so at that point, it's like you can't outwork your thought habits. You've got to stop and dig deeper and figure out what's going on here. And hard work isn't the answer once you get to that point.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
saw on your
hard
website, it
work.
looks like you do a lot of work to support the book and work with people through the book, like through book clubs and things like that. Talk a little bit about how that came about and some experiences you've had.
Yeah. Well, right now I've been going on this listening tour, which is really fun. I got so tired of talking about myself in the book. And I'm desperately hungry to hear from the people I wrote it for. And so I'm going to Phoenix in February. I have one woman gather 20 women in a room. I like it to be no more than 20.
Mm,
And I just facilitate a conversation around the themes of the book: unpaid labor, around boundary setting with your ambition and your goals, around understanding what your natural genius is and harnessing it and really being able to say what it is and to use it, around guilt-free playtime and making sure that you have enough of it in your schedule so that you can do the highest quality of work that you can. But it's been so joyful to just sit in these rooms and just listen. I want to hear their stories. I want to know what's happening. I've been finishing it with, if you could describe the experience of being a woman in one word in 2026, what would that word be? And it's been so good, like just
mm.
meaningful. So that's been super cool in my promotion of the book as well. Yeah. Also, this is so funny. I have this friend Preston that I play pickleball with. He's like Tigger. He just bounds
Oh,
into the gym. Like he doesn't walk in. He's like a whoosh. So he comes into the gym. This is like a couple months ago. He's like, Amy, you're not going to believe what I did this week. And I was like, what did you do? He said, I read your book. And he said they were going on vacation and he said, I'm sitting there, my girlfriend pulls out this bag and she pulls out a book and I said, I know her. I know her. And so he grabbed the book and like read it on their vacation. And he said to me, well, why do you say this book is for women? This was such a good book for me to read. And I was like, well, you are welcome in.
yeah.
You are welcome in. And so I said, but I'm sure there were some things. The interesting thing, it was just such great feedback and it was just funny too. But people have asked me that a lot. A lot of men have said, like, why I read it. It's really good. Why, and it's just that those are my people that I serve the most. I really wanted to
Yeah.
speak to them. So yeah.
Yeah, look, more than one thing can be true at the same time, right? I mean, that's your target audience and that's who you had in mind when you wrote
Yeah.
the book, but like there are certain things that are universal and I'm sure there's plenty of good things to glean from the book if you happen to be in the opposite gender, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I read
Yeah.
books by men all the time. It's fine. Like, yeah, like it's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
I,
gosh.
yeah.
Excuse me, totally. Um, your clients, do you do everything in person? Is it online? How do you typically interact with them?
Most all Zoom because they're all over the country.
Yeah.
So I have clients I also do this fun thing. I took a group of people to the Galapagos Islands, a group of clients in June. Have you been there?
I have not. The Charles Darwin trip I've always wanted to.
Whoa. There was a moment when we were in the Galapagos Islands where I'm snorkeling. Don't go to the Galapagos Islands if you aren't going to snorkel, by the way, because you'll miss like half of the good stuff. It's like a
Mm.
magical wonderland under the water. So I'm swimming and there's this bird called the blue-footed booby. They're like known for it. It's a beautiful bird. And these birds dive into the water. Okay, under me, it looks like the Little Mermaid. Like the colorful fish, the like I mean, I'm serious. And then like a turtle swimming along, right? But as I'm swimming along, these birds are dive bombing down and like catching the fish on either side of me because on the islands, they have never been hunted, so they're not afraid of humans. They don't even know to be fearful because there's no natural predators. So all of the animals, like you can just kind of move in their world in this really cool way. That being said, um, that additional thing, we're going to add every 3 years to just take a group of people to a really cool location. And we bring our husbands, or we had some people bring a son or a sister or whatever.
Sure.
So my clients bring someone. I wanted to bring Ryan. Like I love to spend time with him. So like I wanted to bring him. So we're adding that too. We'll do our next one in 2028 of a fun like adventure like that too for a week. So it's a really unbelievable life I get to live. Sometimes I just think, wow, I'm so glad I worked on myself. Do you ever think that?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I
I
think,
just, I think, wow,
what
like,
if I hadn't taken my shots? What if I hadn't continued to push myself? Where would I be?
and who like gets to do that stuff, right? Who even, how to, wow. Just so grateful, just so grateful, but also just to do work with people that's so meaningful and like life changing is such a gift to wake up and not dread what you do and to really um, believe in it so deeply. So I'm just so grateful.
That's so cool because that's like the entire purpose of our podcast, and that's what I try to explain to people
Mm,
is you get to pick what that is for you. So like for Amy, she's built her business and she gets to work with these awesome people and she loves to teach and coach and interact.
yeah,
That's great for Amy. Maybe that's not you. Maybe
yeah,
you love to do accounting and you can build a really successful accounting firm. Maybe you love to paint and you become an artist. Awesome. Our whole point is you should be deliberate about it. You should be pushing yourself to be the
mhm,
best at whatever that thing is that you can be. And you should
yeah,
kind of constantly strive to be better than you were yesterday. Don't compare yourself to anyone else.
yeah,
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and try to make a little bit of improvement. I call it the compound interest of life. And
yeah,
if you can get a little bit better every day, that interest compounds over a long period of time and you wind up with an awesome life like the one that you're living, you know?
yeah. And like, what do you do that? This is a question I ask in my book too. What do you do that feels so easy to you but astonishes everyone else?
Yeah.
Where people are like, how did you do that? And you're like,
Mm.
what? I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I was 7 years old and created a club in my neighborhood where you had to put a piece of chewed gum on a tree to get in. And then I led discussions about how we could make our neighborhood a better place. I mean, I was a weird kid, but like I was leading groups at the age of 7. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I've been facilitating conversations for as long as I can remember. Now I just get to do it in this lane. So when you think about that, like I have a friend, this is the coolest thing. She is my parents' age, so she's like 74. And she grew up on a farm, had a in a huge family, and loves to cook for huge groups of people. Just knows how to do that whole, right? So my son, who's now in college, but through high school, they have open campus lunch when you're a junior and a senior.
Mm.
He's best friends with her grandson, like they're roommates in college now. 15 boys, high school boys, went to her house every day for open campus lunch and she fed them. Like, can you imagine the quantities of food, right? But you could not bring your phone in. And she would just sit and talk with those boys. And they talked about everything, right?
Mm.
Like they would just talk about the girls and the sports and the college and the job and the school and the class and the teacher and the all the things. But I'm so grateful that she used that gift. Like that most people would be like, oh, she took what she had that she does. I don't know how to cook for that large number of people.
Right.
And she used it like in such a way that I'll forever be grateful. Like as a parent to have that for my kid every day, right? It's just, I'm so grateful to her. And it was something that to her, she's like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. I've talked to kids my whole life. Like I love doing this. This is so fun, right? But I'm like,
Yes.
I don't know how to do that. I'm not ever doing that. But I'm so glad you're doing that. And here's a gift card for Jewel or Kroger or wherever you buy your groceries. Cause like I'm not doing that, right? But
Oh
like
my gosh. Yes.
I really am so grateful to her for using her unique genius to serve my family. And so it's just that same thing of like, what do you do that feels so easy to you that everyone is like, how do you do that? Find that thing and see if you can harness it and use it to build something.
Yeah, that's a great way to, and so it's funny
Mhm.
because I tell people like, the follow your passion. I think that's really bad advice. Find
Mhm.
something you're good at that you can get paid for and then
Mhm.
fall in love with that. Then you're going to be
Yeah.
wildly successful. And depends on what that is for you. Like for me, I'm comfortable in uncomfortable situations, like conversations that people think are difficult or awkward. I don't care. Like I literally don't care. And so I've been that way. It's actually in my high school yearbook. There were people that wrote my high school yearbook. I can't believe you had the guts to say this in that situation, or you never were afraid to speak up. Don't ever lose that type thing. Like I never thought about it that way. It's just like, I like I've never understood the fable the emperor's new clothes. I'm like,
Mm.
what do you mean? Like, if the guy's naked, just say the guy's naked. What do you like? What are we doing here? I don't like. I would be the one that would get thrown in the dungeon. So I'd be like, what are you talking about? That guy's naked. I can see his private
Yeah.
parts. What are we doing
But
here?
that's your natural genius, right?
Right?
And then you're able to bring it into like holding people accountable in work settings
Yeah.
or talking about the thing that nobody wants to say. Why are we printing these reports?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, whatever it is. Yeah,
Yep.
that's really cool. Hmm.
Yeah, and you got to find whatever that magic thing is for you and go after that because that's when you're going to have a life of meaning and purpose. And I try to
Yeah.
tell people don't chase happiness, chase meaning and purpose because that lasts. Happiness doesn't.
Yeah, and sometimes the meaning and purpose isn't the work, it's the thing the work is paying for,
Yeah.
right? Like sometimes you don't have the luxury of the work being the thing. Sometimes it's like the work provides for the thing that is my meaning and passion outside of that too. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know that everyone gets the chance to be so poetic about their work as I do, right? I don't know that that's like, I'm not sure that's everyone's experience, but I do know that when people find their work has purpose, even if it's outside of it, like that this work is providing this, that the work is very fulfilling.
Yeah, and I think it's how you think about it, right? So like I
Mhm.
have a friend, a good friend who is he's got a super successful plumbing business. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I run in circles with pretty successful people that blah, 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 blah. You can fill in the blanks there. And every once in a while, someone will look down their nose at Steve. And I'm like, you know, if you went home tonight and it was 12:30 and you needed to use the bathroom and your toilet didn't work, what would you do? Could you fix it? And they're like, no. I said, then maybe you shouldn't think so badly about Steve because Steve could fix it and he'd be pretty important right then. So it's
Yep.
horses for courses. And simply because you don't place significant, um,
Value.
yeah,
Mhm.
gosh, I don't know why I'm struggling with the
Like a
word.
status thing or like
Status. That's exactly the word.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it's not important because like it's funny. I saw a thing that it was a dad giving out Christmas presents, and he had gone and put a ribbon on the light switch and a ribbon on the furnace and a ribbon on the refrigerator. Like, you're welcome for all the electricity this year. You're welcome for all
Mhm.
the heat this year. You're welcome for all the
Yeah,
food
the
this year.
water.
It's my,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
oh my
I
gosh.
love it.
And it's just,
Yeah,
it's how you think about it, right?
I was interviewing. So I was working with this construction company and I did a workshop with them. And this story's in the book too. It's such a great story. And it's interesting when you see someone's natural genius, also, you kind of know it. Like there's something that happens where you're like, wow. So as a part of the day, I was interviewing the four like manager type role people. So these four guys are sitting up here. Now, if you can't see me, I don't look like someone who would work for a construction company. And so
True.
There's a room full of like 30 guys and me, and these four are up here. And, like we take regular smoke breaks with them, and like they're awesome, but like it is just a different world than the one that I normally occupy.
You're in the manosphere for sure.
Totally. But I like adore these guys. So I'm talking to Angel. And I say, how did you know you were going to be in construction? Like, how did you get to be in construction? They do roofs and siding and gutters and windows and such. And he said, well, it all started when I built my first house for my pet pigeons. And so the guys were kind of not really paying attention. They're like, whatever. He said that the whole room like stopped and like turned, and it was like a locked in moment. I was like, pigeons? And he said, yeah, where I grew up, we would climb up in the rafters of under the overpass in the highway, and we would get these pigeons when they were old enough, and we would like raise them, and they would become tame, and they were like our pet. We loved them. And he said we didn't have anywhere to put them, and so my uncle brought over some wood. And I am telling you, Joe, as he talked about this combination of building something for someone that was really important to him, like a pet, it was like it was like out of this world. Like he was just like a different
Mm,
countenance. It was like so compelling that I know everyone who was in that room would still be able to tell you that story because it was so meaningful to him, and he was so sincere about it. And I'm like, yeah, you can put a hammer and nails. I'm sorry, you can put a nail in wood. That wasn't what he was doing.
right.
There was something so much more to him about that job, and it was like really even just so inspiring for me to see someone come alive talking about their unique genius, the thing that they can do that feels easy to him, but like I'm not building anything. So, I mean, I'm
I love
building
that.
a business, but not anything with my hands. So,
Yeah, I love that pride when people just have that pride in what they're doing. I
Mhm.
love excellence. Like I can remember, as a kid, um, I watched, there wasn't a lot of sports on TV when we were growing up. And
Mhm.
so like there was a Saturday game of the week for baseball, but every summer Wimbledon would come on. And because it was in England and I was on the West Coast, I grew up on the West Coast, there was what, an 8 hour, 9 hour time difference.
Yeah.
So I would get up at 6, 7 in the morning. And I remember vividly like watching Martina Navratilova at Wimbledon and going, God, this woman's so good at tennis. She's so much better than everyone she
Mm.
plays. I remember he's like a 7, 8 year old kid appreciating that excellence that she
Yeah.
displayed. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be in sports, it could be in music, it could be in business, it could be in
I
art. I
don't care
don't
if you're
care.
building bridges with toothpicks. I don't
That's
care
right.
if you're really into it.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
am here for it. Like I want to know, and everybody has their thing. It's so interesting, right? I worked for a guy in college who was like a car guy, and
Yep.
he always hired people from the women's basketball team to work for him. And I mean, it was so fascinating. I don't care about cars really, but like I was all in because he was so in, I
Right.
was just like fascinated to be a part of it when someone is so locked in on their thing or they have a high level of mastery.
Yeah, me
Mhm.
too. I'm all in on those
Yeah.
scenarios and authenticity too. I always tell people
Mhm.
if I know that you're being who you really are, you
Mhm.
could have very different ideas and thoughts than me. I'm on your side simply because I know you genuinely think and feel what you're saying right now. That's all I'm ever looking for. I don't want you to agree with me. I don't
Yeah.
need you to think the way I think. I don't need you to validate my
Yeah.
thoughts or my existence. I want to know what you're about. And if you're willing to share that with me, I'm all in. I'm all in. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yep. How do people work with you? I heard you talk about building and taking on new clients. If people want to get in contact with you, how do they do it?
Yeah. Fastest and easiest way is on my website. So amykemp.com, AMYKEMP.com, to take the habit finder. It is free. You get the results. It's like a 44-page PDF, and then all the reports come to you immediately. And that's a great way for you to just kind of start exploring. You can also contact me through the website and sign up for my newsletter and all of that kind of thing as well. There's a cool tab about my book where obviously you can order the book. You can, people always ask this too, if it's on Audible. It is, and it's my voice. They always want to know that too. So, yes,
Nice.
you can get the book there. There's tons of extra resources. Actually, you can get the six most important things list format that I'm not using there.
I saw it on your website. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually saw it on there.
So if you'd like to not use it along with me, that would be great. But the website is really like your best hub for interaction with me and learning more about my work.
Very good. And for the listeners, as always, we'll put any links to anything. I mean, it's Amy's website is pretty much it, but it's in the show notes is my point. So you don't have to go far to look. Just go down the show notes, click on it. It'll take you right there. Um, so one of the things I do, because I feel like we always cover a lot of territory. We have great conversations with people. I love doing the podcast because I personally learn so much from our guests. And I always think it's so good when we have guests on that take a different approach or think differently than me, because the
Mhm.
audience knows how I think and my approach. And I'm kind of the hard charging, toughen up guy. Great. That works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. And there's no right or wrong. If it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't work for you, no big deal. I will argue that I've become a big advocate for coaching, and I always use a football analogy. Let's just assume Tom Brady is largely considered the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL. At every step in his development, he had a head coach, he had an offensive coordinator, he had a quarterbacks coach, he had to work with the tight ends coach, he had to work with the offensive line coach, he had to work with the receivers coach. If he needed all those coaches to be as good as he was, I would argue that you're probably not as good at what you do as Tom Brady was at what he did, and he needed all that coaching. Probably worth investing in yourself if you want to kind of maximize your potential. So find a coach that works for you. Maybe it's Amy, maybe it's not Amy. But what could go wrong by taking the assessment, seeing where it leads you, and then going from there. So I'm a big fan of, you don't, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And so that's what a good coach does. Like Amy's talked about multiple times on here, pulling that out of you and saying, I see this in you. You might not see it, but I do. Let's pursue that a little bit. How do we pull that out of you? So, with all that said, that's the end of my soliloquy there, but I don't want to miss anything because I didn't ask the right question or good question. So I always open the floor at the end of our interview. Is there
Mhm.
any subject or item or thing that we haven't talked about yet that you
Mhm.
feel strongly about that you want to talk about in front of the audience? And if no, that's fine.
Mhm.
I just want to miss it because I didn't ask the right questions.
Yeah. Maybe it's just kind of a restatement of what you just said about there's a lot of ways you can work on external things, improving systems, getting better at skills, learning. And I think all of those things are important. But the things that have moved the needle in my experience, watching people, but even just my own lived experience, are the investments I made in me. And I don't, like I said, when if you're an athlete, you think about that. When did you play your best, right? It was like I'm going to talk about pickleball one last time because you've been with me for an hour, so at least twice as necessary. It's so annoying. Over the summer, I worked with this coach, and there were like eight of us working with her, and she's an expert. She's really an expert, but also a really great teacher. It was like a part of me came alive. Like I felt so jazzed about the incremental improvements I was seeing in my game, but just it felt so fun to have someone give me feedback that was like right there and accurate because I couldn't see what I was doing. And there were so many times where she would say, okay, like just settle your feet down. And I didn't even know they were moving.
Yep.
And that's the same thing in a business setting. There's so many things you're doing that you just can't see because you can't see yourself. And when you work with someone where you can like have that kind of feedback in that space where you can get better, I also just think it's fun. Like it makes the whole thing so cool. Like, wow, I'm seeing progress being made and change and growth. And that feels really exciting. I just talked to a client where, I mean, she's quadrupled her income in our year that we've worked together.
Wow.
Quadrupled. And she's working less than she's ever worked before. And we were talking about it, and she was like, I kept trying to work harder. I kept trying to work harder. I didn't realize I had all of these habits of thinking around money, like that were so unhealthy. And I was just repelling it. Like at the same time, I was trying to get it. And all she changed was some of these mindsets. And she's supremely talented. Like, I don't need to worry about that. But like the money just came rushing in because she just shifted these thoughts. But she didn't know she was thinking that way because she didn't know. How would you know? So I just want to really reiterate and like enforce that when you don't know what to do to grow it and it feels like it's stuck, whatever it is, your career, your marriage, your business, your whatever, like invest in growing you. That will move the needle faster than anything else.
Awesome. Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it. And you said it so well. I would screw it up if I tried to add to it. So
Perfect. I love
love
it.
it. Amy, thank you so much for the time
Mhm.
tonight. Really, really enjoyed our conversation. I think the audience got a ton out of it. And like we said, go down into the show notes, find Amy's website, look her up, take her assessment, and go from there. But Amy, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our time.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Have a great night.
You too.
Nice job, Amy. That was such a good conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being such a great guide.
Yeah,
I do some of these where people are terrible. So I really appreciate it.
yeah, it's funny because like that's why we don't put a time limit on it. Like you had talked about, I really appreciate the way you talked about some of your getaways, retreats, however you refer to them,
Yeah.
in that they become if you set them up informal and give people some space, really
Mm,
good things can happen. And that's what I try to do on the
yeah.
podcast is just start like should be like two people talking over a cup of coffee or over a dinner or something like that. So
Yeah.
and we're fortunate we attract really high caliber people. And
Mhm.
I think it was James that referred you
Yeah.
to us, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He does
He's
all my
like
cooking.
he's like 15 for 15. He sent us such awesome people.
Oh,
I'm
good.
just really appreciative that he keeps sending us great people. So
I've found him to be a joy to work with. So, yeah.
yeah, we've developed a good relationship with him. And that's wild to me, kind of like your coaching business. I run grocery stores. That's what I do, but I love
Yeah.
doing the podcast. And so I do it. And we started about a year and a half ago, and we just passed 16,000 subscribers, and
Mhm.
we're approaching 600,000 views all time. And I'm like, I,
Amazing.
we've got like booking agents calling us. I'm like, you should call like this is salty ginger. Like, you got this right? Are you sure? But I love it. I learn so much and get to meet so many
Oh,
awesome
good.
people. And
Yeah.
yeah, just really appreciate the
Yeah.
time.
Well, you're great at probably like creating a feeling of comfort and safety, like where you feel comfortable talking. So it's really cool.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you
Yeah.
being willing to spend some time with us.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm off to
Well,
a basketball game.
yeah, stay warm if you can. Have a good weekend and
Okay.
be
All right.
safe.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, see you, Amy. Okay, there you go, guys. Amy is as advertised. She did such a great job, an awesome lady, and we're really fortunate to get her on the podcast. Loved how she talked about her journey from a young athlete to coach, and the stops that she made along the way and what she learned from those stops along the way. And such good advice and such good guidance that she's offering people, not only in our conversation, but on her website. So make sure you go to her website, make sure you check out her business. I know she talked about largely coaching and working with women. Doesn't matter what your gender is, there's lots of good things that you can learn from Amy and what she's teaching. So I encourage you to go check it out. What's the worst that you can do is learn something about yourself and get better. That doesn't sound like a terrible thing to me. So thank you again, Amy. Did a great job. Really appreciated having you on the podcast. So James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are available there. Links to our social media accounts are available there. We've got a newsletter we publish every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website. And we're going to keep having awesome guests like Amy on. giving you all sorts of tips and tools that you can use to build the life that you want. It's all great stuff. You don't want to miss any of it. So make sure you catch our next episode. We'll see you there.